Okay, next up on our test review, we're going to do numbers 5 and 6, and they both involve dividing complex numbers. Number 5 has negative 1 minus 4i over 10i. And let's just take a quick look at number 6. Number 6 states 6 plus I over negative 5 minus 5i. Notice that number 6, there is an I on the bottom as there is in number 5. However, number 6 also has a real part, and that is going to make a difference in the way we go about solving the problem. So let's get back to number 5. Remember that we don't want an I to be in the denominator, so what we would like to do is rationalize, and in order to rationalize, I'm going to multiply by a form of 1, so 10i over 10i. Whatever's in the denominator in this case, you take that and divide it by itself and multiply this whole term by that. So on top, we're going to wind up distributing the 10i to both terms. 10i times negative 1 yields negative 10i. 10i times negative 4i yields negative 40i squared. And this will be over 10i times 10i, or 10i times itself. 10 times 10 would be 100, and I times I would be I squared. Now, the next thing we'd like to do is wherever we see an I squared, we will replace it with, remember, I squared is equal to negative 1. So we're going to write negative 10i minus 40, parentheses, negative 1, over 100, parentheses, negative 1. And let's go a step further. Negative 10i. Negative 40 times negative 1 is positive 40. And 100 times negative 1 is negative 100. Okay, the next thing we need to do is simplify this whole term here. So in order to do that, we're going to split it up. Remember that the negative 100 is dividing the negative 10i in addition to the 40. Now I'm going to write the 40 first because that's the real part. So 40 divided by negative 100. And then I'm going to write the imaginary part, minus 10i divided by negative 100. 40 over negative 100, this can be simplified by dividing the top and the bottom both by 20. 40 divided by 20 is 2. Negative 100 divided by 20 is negative 5. Now here we have a negative divided by a negative. This yields a positive. The biggest number that goes into 10 and 100 evenly is 10. Now when I take 10 and divide it by 10, this will become 1, so I'm going to be left with I on top. And the 100 divided by 10 will be 10, so your final answer will be negative 2/5 plus I over 10. Okay, let's get to the second one. Now, the second one is a little bit more complicated because we have a full complex number in the denominator. So in this case, we are going to multiply the top and the bottom of the rational number by the conjugate of negative 5 minus 5i. Recall that when we take the conjugate of a complex number, we take the opposite of only the imaginary part. So I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by negative 5 plus 5i over negative 5 plus 5i. So step 1, we're going to multiply the top, and in order to multiply the top, we're going to use the box method. If you are more comfortable with FOIL, please feel free to use that. Okay, so let's draw a box. And we're going to put a 6 and a positive I, and on the side a negative 5 and a positive 5i. Here we're going to multiply 6 times negative 5, which gets us negative 30. Here we're going to multiply 6 times 5i, which gets us 30i. Here we're going to multiply I times negative 5, which gets us negative 5i. And here 5i times I is going to get us 5i squared. Next up, we're going to combine like terms, and that's going to be these two numbers here. And we will see in a minute that negative 30 and 5i squared are like terms as well. But let's go ahead and combine here first. So I'm going to write negative 30. Negative 5 and positive 30 is a positive 25i. And I'm going to write plus 5. Instead of I squared, remember we're going to replace that with a negative 1. Now, 5 times negative 1 is negative 5, and I'm going to combine that with negative 30, and that gets us negative 35 plus 25i. We'll go ahead and just put a box around that so we remember that we're going to use it later on. And let me go to step 2. Step 2, we're going to multiply the bottom. So negative 5 minus 5i times negative 5 plus 5i. And in order to do that, we're going to use a method called the difference of two squares. All right, it's essentially a shortcut, and the reason why we can use this shortcut is because the terms are the same, and the only thing that's different is the minus and the plus here. Remember that if we do the box method, the i's are going to drop out, they're going to become 0. So in order to do the difference of two squares, we take the real part, negative 5, and we square it. I have to put that in parentheses, negative 5 squared. Remember, whenever we square a negative number, we have to put a parentheses around it. Plus the imaginary part, which is 5, and I square that. So negative 5 squared plus 5 squared is 25 plus 25, which is 50. All right, our next step is going to be to rewrite and simplify. So remember that at the top we got negative 35 plus 25i, and on the bottom we got 50. Now we can't leave this rational piece right here like so because we have to simplify. So in order to simplify, we're going to separate the fraction. I'm going to write negative 35 over 50 plus 25i over 50. We write the denominator twice. The biggest number that goes into negative 35 and 50 evenly is 5. And this is going to reduce to negative 7 over 10. The biggest number that goes into 25 and 50 evenly is 25. This is going to reduce to 25 divided by 5. That's actually divided by 25. The 25 will become a 1, and we'll be left with I. 50 divided by 25 is 2, so our final answer is going to be negative 7 over 10 plus I over 2. And I do realize that this is slightly different from the one that was on the review. There was a 9 here, but the techniques are exactly the same.